Welcome to this Making of Mid-Century Modern panel. We've gathered an incredible group of all-stars to dive into what makes this show so special. Joining us today are co-creators and executive producers Max Mutchnick and David Kohan, executive producer and director James Burrows, production designer Greg Grande, and editor Peter Chakos. To start, Max and David, you create the series, which I understand was inspired by a script you had thought about many years ago. So can you tell us how that idea evolved and why now felt like the right moment to bring mid-century modern to the screen?
Take it away, Dave. See, I'm making it like a party already.
Well, as younger people, we always wanted to write about older people, just because they had lived more life and had more interesting stories to tell. And now, as older people, we find ourselves wanting to write about our peer group. And so that's really what it was. We revisited the script we had written years ago. When we wrote it, there was such an emphasis on writing about young people, about 20-somethings and 30-somethings.
And this show is called Senioritis.
And it took place in a retirement home. And so we got rid of the premise, but kept this notion of like, these are people who have lived lives, who have had relationships and friendships that have spanned decades, and that was our starting point.
Well, we didn't understand why a network, in the glow of the Friends craze, didn't want to make a show about Tony Curtis, Alan Arkin, Sandy Dennis, and Elaine Stritch, but we put a pin in it, and now we get to kind of visit that world, but it's a very, very different world.
I mean, well, casting is so important, and you've got Nathan Lane, Matt Bomer, Nathan Lee Graham, Linda Lavin. It's a dream ensemble, and I understand Ryan Murphy had a heavy hand in casting that. So how did you work with him in that process?
We brought the script to Ryan when we finished, and he was very clear from the beginning. I don't do what you guys do, but there is a thing that I do very well, and it's casting and marketing these shows. And he really delivered in flying colors, because we turned the draft in. He read it that night, and Nathan Lane was on board by the end of the day, the following day.
Yeah, he said this seems like it would be something good for Nathan Lane, and we said, yeah, it would be great if we could get it to him. And Ryan said, well, why don't I just give it to him on the set of one of my shows tomorrow?
Right.
Basically the way that went.
I mean, and then the curveball that, took us a second, but ultimately was kind of a stroke of genius, was the next, following the Nathan Lane, coup or score, was Ryan saying, I think you should rewrite the part of Jerry for Matt Bomer. And Dave and I and Jimmy had worked with Matt on the reboot of Will and Grace, and we knew that he had this secret skill set of being able to play in this comedy sandbox with the best of the best. And we brought the script we did some tinkering on the work, and then brought it to Matt, and then Matt was on board. Again, thanks to Ryan, because we didn't see it. We didn't see it at first, and he did. We always knew we loved Nathan Lee Graham, and he showed us that he's the one, when we screen tested him with Nathan Lane in New York. And Linda Lavin, Dave, tell them about when you called Jimmy to talk about Linda.
There were a couple of actresses we were talking about, and among the names was Linda Lavin, and Jimmy, who has worked with everybody. We said, well, what do you think, Jimmy? He said, Linda Lavin. And we said, really? Would you care to elaborate? She's a heat-seeking missile with a joke. She's the best of the best. And that was basically the end of that conversation.
And we then brought that transcript back to Ryan and the casting machers at Disney and Hulu, and Linda was on board, and again, to use an expression of Mr. Burrows, this cast was lightning in a bottle. You put these casts together, and that when you're done, the show is either going to work or it is not going to work. You know, because you have the horses that can do it, right? One weak link, I think, on a multicam stage can actually bring an entire show down, and we just we didn't have that here. Jim and Dave and I did a private read the day before the actual table read to get a sense of what they sounded like, and by the end of the first act, you knew, oh my God, we have a cast that can actually do it. And Mr. Burrows said to me, I didn't think you would ever pull this off again, where you would find me a cast that's worth me leaving one of my 17 mansions and work with you schlubs again. And I just on a personal note, and I think Dave agrees, it's very gratifying to be able to put actors together that are at the caliber that deserve to be directed by him, because if you bring him the best, he knows what to do with that. If you bring him someone from TikTok, not so much.
Jim, you've been part of so many iconic sitcoms in TV history. What was it about this cast that brings you back? I mean, you have to be a little spoiled. You don't come back for just anyone.
For me, the most important thing is not it's not the cast to begin with. It's the writing and the ability of the collaboration between me and the writers. A lot of times, I'll read a really good script and I talk to the writers, and there's no flexibility. They're defensive instead of defending their material. So it starts with that, and then it's pure luck when you do it with a casting. The fact that we got these 4 people to agree to do the show was manna from heaven. So why would I not do it? I knew I was in a safe environment with people I could trust, and I knew that the actors, I didn't know about their chemistry until we had that reading at Max's house. You never know about that unless you really read them together. If you read them together as individual in a twosome, you still don't know. But I think all of us were incredibly and pleasantly surprised when these guys interacted with one another like they had been together forever. So to be blessed with something like that, it's just, it was a great show that we all made extraordinary.
I mean, but to his point, I think part of, because Dave and I have worked with Jimmy since we're very little, and we were socialized by him in terms of how the writing process works on a multicam, and the collaboration between Jim and the two of us has just, it's ingrained into the process. He hears it and he responds to it very honestly, and it's a great help. It's a great help, and we do listen.
If I could just add really quickly that what's so interesting about, we've all been doing this so long, right? But when you're excited to show up to work, to collaborate with everybody on the team and make it an enjoyable experience, it's not just the chemistry of the cast, it's the chemistry of the entire group of people, whether it's the notes you're getting from Jimmy or from Max and David. It becomes a beautiful experience. And I think, you capture something only so many times in your career, and this particular show has captured some of that, which is what makes it such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I would add then that we've all worked together for decades with Peter and with Gary and with Greg. We've all done shows together, going back to the 90s. It really is. There's something about coming to work and being with like a kind of work family. It was actually delightful.
How much impact does it have when you have actors as well who have so much stage experience and they're in front of a live audience? Do you feel that when you're on set?
Completely.
Well, yes.
It's everything, because it's the skill set that's developed in the theater of being in a rehearsal experience. And Nathan Lane would probably argue that the filming of one of these episodes is just like filming the most jazzed up rehearsal, because we're in process until the very end, until Jim yells cut at the end of the night. We are changing and finessing almost every aspect of the show. It's not necessarily that we're moving mountains, but we are changing things. And so to have a cast that has theater experience, they're very nimble on their feet, and you can bring things to them and they're responsive to it right away.
And they know how to play off an audience, and they know how to play out entire scenes as opposed to little snippets of scenes, so that you get the entire emotional arc of a scene, which they're accustomed to because they've done it on stage.
I'll loop in Peter Chakos, who I feel like is the secret weapon, and next to Jim is probably the most important creative collaboration that Dave and I have on the show, because I always feel like walking into Peter's office after we filmed is the chance for Dave and I to do our last rewrite, and that can only happen when you're working with an editor that fully understands dramaturgy and scripts, and
needs to understand writing and acting and directing.
Yeah, and he has all of that in his arsenal. So we're able to take something that was good and make it great, because he's shaving frames. It really does it with the work that Peter does, the precision work that he does. It's about the perfect reaction and the perfect amount of time that you're with each character. It's
not bad for a guy who's obviously just a frustrated musician.
Yeah, clearly.
Peter, what is that collaboration like for you? How many cuts are you getting from Jim, and how do you work together on all of that?
Well, every episode's different in terms of how many cuts, but it's like I come to it with fresh eyes. So it's I don't go to the rehearsals anymore or to the run throughs. I just go to the show. So I'm seeing it for the first time, having sometimes not even read the script.
Peter, what makes it better for you? What about that is better for you? Or is it just laziness?
No, it's visceral.
Busking. He's busy busking during the day.
No, my reaction is right in the moment. So you'll hear me laugh out loud because it's truly funny, not because I've heard other people laugh at it before. It's a instant reaction, and it's also instantly where I see, wait, can that be different? Can we do something different there in terms of either, I don't know, cameras, everything. I'll look to Jimmy and be like, hey, maybe, are you planning something else? Usually he is. So, because you can't get everything at once, even with 4 cameras. But I like that vibe where I haven't seen it before anymore. I used to go to everything before, and then, you're kind of, I get immune to the jokes, so I don't laugh at them anymore if I've seen them 7 times. But seeing them for the first time, and then when they do the rewrite, I also know which joke hit me harder, and that's the one I put in. And, sometimes you want the smaller joke because it's smarter, even though it didn't get the bigger laugh, because the big laugh came from a joke that's a little more risque. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's naughty, and it's not as smart as the other joke, so you keep the other one. But the collaborating with these guys is great because we talk it out. It's not like, cut that, do this, do that. It's like, wait, why would you want to cut that? There's other stuff, I'd rather cut. And I cut before they see it. So we'll do the show, and when they come in for the first time, I've already taken out 6 minutes.
His life used to be, when the 3 of us started working together, it used to be breaking up fights.
Yes.
Right? That's what the experience used to be.
The moderator.
As it's matured, it's nice to have this other partner that you can say, okay, You decide what's the one that works best for story. I mean, you weigh, what do you want? Do you want story or do you want funny? It's a win when both of them hit at the same time, but it is nice having those fresh eyes. And I think the thing that, though, is probably the most frustrating for Peter is that Dave and I refuse to watch full cuts.
Yes.
You know,
they won't watch the long version.
We won't look at it.
No. So, but that's okay. I like that because it gives me a chance to say, well, again, I'm not married to any of the jokes. I didn't write them. I'm not married to anything. So when I cut something, it's not there's no attachment to it. And it just is like what I think works. But these guys are funny because they bring different things to the table. So, you know, Max wants everything fast. He's like, get rid of all of that. And Dave's like, but I like that. Dave likes almost every word in the script, right? So Dave wants to keep everything. Max wants to cut everything. Max would have a 4-minute show of the best parts. So,
I'm the Giacometti of showrunners.
Yeah.
And for those highbrow arty types listening at home, but you know, we were once doing a pilot at Warner Brothers, and Dave was away or you know, with his daughter. I don't remember why, but I got time alone with Peter, and I cut the thing down to like a YouTube short, right? And I was so thrilled with it. I was like, this thing finally works. And you know, like, send it to Peter Roth, who was running Warner Brothers at the time. We finally have cracked the nut. And they sent it over, and then I walked back from Peter's edit bay, and as I walked into that building, Peter looked at me and was like, that was actually where I got it from. He's like, are you out of your mind? You're like fucking Giacometti. You cut every single thing out of the show. There is no show there anymore. I'm like, but it goes fast.
We often joke that, or mention how like the fast editing, that's what gets awards. They overlook a lot of like subtle editing. And one of the scenes I wanted to ask about is that I found so funny is episode 6, the maid service opening, when they're putting the pillboxes together. And then it's just a quick edit, and then it goes into a musical set to the beat of a leaky faucet. Can you just walk me through that just a little bit?
Oh, is it? And Pacheco's put in the leaky faucet.
Yeah.
Or did you do? Who's he? I mean,
no,
because
that was me.
That was
you. But assembling that, like, there was no plumber and there was no leaky faucet initially, right. And it was like, you need something.
I don't know what you refer to this as, Peter. That editing, it was actually invented on MASH when they took the static shot of the speaker and they were able to put a joke into the speaker, you know, telling the troops to, you know, go to the mess hall or go to the operations or something like that. These things that are completely created by the editor, separate from the entire creative production experience. And this was a thing when we saw that cut, that he did the best that you can do with a song that had absolutely no meter to it and no, and we figured we had to add something to it, right?
And the idea originally was, you know, we had just been listening. There was in my daughter's car on the way to school, she was playing that song from Chicago, the Cell Block Tango. And Max, I knew we wanted to do something with like sorting pills and musicals, just because it seemed to be the perfect confluence of who these people were. And originally that was going to be the first thing you saw after the pilot. It moved later into the season. But like coming back, you know, it's pills and musicals, and that's what our show is, you know. And so we, you know, we were able to do that using that particular song. We found a way to just like, then it was finding like, what are the names of pills and afflictions that work with the time?
But we had to go back and reshoot that opening in order to get those put
the plumber in. Yeah. We had to invent the plumber.
That was done weeks later. We put them in the same clothes again, put them back on the set, and they're like, what the fuck are we doing this for again? This was a nightmare to to actually say, you know,
Right.
and we're like, we just need to introduce a leaky faucet and a plumber.
Another situation where, like, in lesser hands, think of how bad that would have been. The idea that you don't have the people who are capable of pulling that off, and it's a disaster. They were musical, performers.
Yeah, they are.
But Jim gave us everything that we needed. The close-ups of the mouths between the four of us was actually a wonderful collaboration, because it all of us had to bring something to it,
Yeah, to make it musical. I know I overdid it. I went home and I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I found every pipe sound in the world, and I tried to overdo it, and then we pulled back, because I knew that would be the heavy lifting, would be to make it too much. So I made it too much, and then we were like, no, it's too much. So it came down to like just clanks in the middle instead of a whole musical thing underneath it.
And Greg, I want to get you in on this talk about the production design, and what is the mid-century modern look that you were going for gay men of a certain age in Palm Springs?
Well, I mean, the point of the entire set is to bring that to life, that world of Palm Springs mid-century architecture that, I was fortunate enough to be born and raised in LA, so Palm Springs is near and dear to me. We had a house out there, so I know it well. I've done a few mid-century homes in the past, but, bringing to life that flavor of layering and detail. And the beauty is, when you work with David and Max and Jimmy, you know that the set has to be something special and beautiful. And so they care about that. It's almost another character in the show. So for us, it was, trying to do our best research and bring what we feel like is, has some of that beautiful thing that gay men would care about, whether it's, the architecture obviously is one element, but then our decorator, Peter Gursky, finds these crazy elements that he brings to me that are like, whether it's organic or the most wild pieces of art. And Max really cares about stuff like that. So it makes it a lot easier when you can collaborate with somebody that knows what they're talking about. And again, Jimmy, often, having worked with him so long, that he wants to tuck up into spaces that aren't your typical multi-camera looks. So he'll come around the corner and shoot from another angle or a porthole, and I think that's the beauty of having done this for a while, that you get to do things a little bit out of the box. Single camera world is completely different than the multicam. And to Peter's point, you can't capture everything in 4 cameras. So you get the opportunity to have these nooks and crannies in a multi-camera show. And a set like this, mid-century modern, gave us the opportunity, obviously, the big picture windows in the upstage, and be able to have Gary Baum be okay with having chandeliers hanging. You don't get that often. You don't get that with every DP. So again, I reiterate that the collaborative effort to have, our executive creators care about it, have a director that's going to use it in a shot, and have a DP be able to, light it and not nix, something that we want to drop into the set, because it creates reality for what we're trying to accomplish, the look of a show. And what do you get? You get a beautiful, magical set. I mean, it's a gorgeous set, and we try to do that with every episode, every, swing set that we do.
It's the most beautiful set we've ever worked on. I mean, it's enormous, because Greg Grande, his name,
Grande,
it's in the name, and there's nothing small, and we definitely like that on a gay show, and this set is just, it's something to behold, because you go to multicam sets and they're usually underwhelming. And, when you see Jerry's apartment on Seinfeld, you can't believe how small it is. And this is a show that, because of what he's done to that set, we can film an entire episode in the living room, in the kitchen, in the den, and feel like we've told a very full story. And the whole set also is backed, so you can shoot out. You can go outside too, right, Greg?
Yes, exactly. You can shoot from the outside looking back in with a fourth wall, which hopefully in season 2 we'll be able to do a little bit more of.
I am most excited about shooting something with the reverse, so we can see
yeah.
I want to see the fireplace in front of that.
Yes, exactly.
The couch. I want to see that big stone fireplace.
Exactly.
Gary, for you, I mean, you have such a rich history with comedy as well, especially multicam. What do you love about multicam as a cinematographer, and what stands out to you about this series in particular?
Oh, well, multi-camera to me, I fell into it many years ago. And I started with Jimmy on Friends, as a camera assistant. And every day you go to work and you laugh, and I love working with Max and David and Jimmy. It's because every day is fun. You go to work and you laugh. I have friends who are single camera DPs and they work on whatever, murder, mayhem, and they come home depressed. I go, oh, I don't like that. This is fun. I wake up and I have fun. So that's it. Multi-camera, though, is a big challenge because you have to light for 4 cameras. So there are no, lighting setups between takes. So everything has to be, sort of, on the snoot with all 4 cameras. So I love the set, on the show. It's so vibrant. It's so much fun. It's huge. And I try to bring some cinematic values into the show that you normally don't see on a, sitcom. And, with Greg's design, and I have complete support from Max, David, and Jimmy. It's like, have a safety net. It's almost like whatever I do is great for them. And if they have something that they want to say, they do. And I love it because that's your backdrop. You're not afraid to do anything. You're not afraid to use a different technique, different lighting, whatever the script calls for. So that's the fun part of it that I really enjoy. And the show is so colorful that I try to bring that into the show as well. I like the detail, I like the color, and we try to keep it cinematic. It's really
Gary. Specifically, what did you do this season that was difficult, or like what? I'm just curious. What would an example be of something that you shot that you liked the way that it looked, or were unhappy with the way that it looked? I'm just curious.
No, you know what? I'm always, when I leave this set, I'm always happy, or at least after I leave color, I post, I'm always happy. If I have an issue, I go to Jimmy and I say, I need this or I need that, and sometimes he'll say, okay, if it doesn't interfere with the funny, it's great. But
the way you lit the grotto was beautiful.
Oh yeah, the grotto was a lot of fun. I like the jacuzzi. We had lights inside the water, like a normal jacuzzi would at night, and that was a lot of fun. Greg and I made a soft drop from Roscoe for the backing, and to me, that brings out the whole Palm Springs into the living room. And I really enjoy that. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole set is that backdrop. And we lit it for day, we lit it for night, we lit it for dusk, we lit it for sunrise. It was just a real challenge, but a real treat to do all that. And I love the swing sets because it gives us a lot of fun to do different things, like Greg said, the grotto, which is jacuzzi in a backyard. And we try to bring in the elements onto stage that would look like it's Palm Springs. It's not day out, on the stage, but we try to bring in some shafts of sunlight and some, different elements to make it look more cinematic.
I thought the way you did the the pickleball court is incredible. You know, I mean, it felt
thank you. Yeah,
very outside.
yeah, that was a very fun. That was a fun episode. I really enjoyed that. That whole scene out there was so funny. But I needed to. The set was huge, and I wanted to make it look like it was hot in Palm Springs. You know, so we added a lot of sunlight. We added a lot of little pockets of sun and shadow to make it appear that we're outside. So that was fun.
Is Bound having more fun than we are?
I think so.
I'm having a blast. It's such a treat working with them because, like I said, it's like family. It's a lot of fun, and you feel like you're part of the process rather than, you know, just working there. You know, they ask you questions. They confer with you. They ask you your opinion, and to me, that's part of the fun going to work with those gentlemen. So I really enjoy that.
Put another quarter in the machine, will you?
All right.
Working with you two is always great because I know the show is going to be hilarious. It goes back to Will and Grace. I mean, these are the funniest shows I've ever worked on. The Will and Grace and this one, they're just always funny. You don't laugh this much on, I mean, for me at least, on any other show. It's just, these are funny shows and endearing characters that you like. You like these people. And that's so important in a sitcom, that you like the characters when you're watching them. And no matter, you know, you can write a snippy character, a mean character, but there's still a quality to them. I mean, not that the show has that, but there's always a quality when you guys write that you just like everybody.
I want to back that up by telling a story. My dad was Abe Burrows. He was a playwright on Broadway.
Never heard of him.
Now, hold on. He wrote Guys and Dolls, and George Kaufman directed Guys and Dolls. And he had an idea about putting a treadmill downstage, a treadmill where it goes across the stage and actors stand on it, and they move across the stage without really walking. And he said to George, "What do you think about that?" And George says, "Depends what they say on it." So we are not having this discussion with any of us if the audience does not buy into these characters and to these actors. And so the essence, as Peter said, is these characters, is the writing, is the relationship, because they are the windows that lead you into this gorgeous set. If they didn't say the words that they say now, we wouldn't be talking about this set. We wouldn't. This is the genius that Max and David have of writing these characters that are, you know, some of America don't respect the gay people. But, you know, Max wrote these gay people that love one another. And so you get a lot of the country tuning in to see this love. And that's what makes this show. And that's what allows us to have this conversation about the set and the cinematography and the editing. That's the nutshell of what makes a great show.
But it's also, I mean, it's 10 episodes. So like, how, as writers, how are you working that in and deciding these are the subplots, and then also maintaining this larger arc of the story that we do see go episode to episode?
I mean, this is a writing room full of talented people also. Just, you know, you go in, you sit, you have a conversation. Most often it starts from what you do in your own life and find out how to transpose that to the characters you're writing about. But that's where that all happens, you know, in the writing room. You write, Max and I write the pilot by ourselves, but after that, you know, it really is a collaborative process with all the writers.
And talk about how you had to shift things then with the loss of Linda Lavin. I mean, that was a tragic situation, but you have to pivot then and sort of change the direction of the series on the spot. So what was the challenge of doing that, and also doing it with humor and tribute to her in those last couple of episodes.
All of it. I mean, the first challenge is how do you deal with just the loss on a personal level? It's amazing. We were just at a memorial service, and Joe Mantegna, who knew her and was a neighbor of hers, said that when I met her, it was like meeting a new old friend. And now Jimmy's known her for a while. I met her on this show, and that was my exact experience. Suddenly I had this new old friend. That was the vibe she brought to the set. And everybody, I think, had a comparable experience where it was like you felt known by her because she made it that way. She was a spectacular person. So the first adjustment is, this is a big personal loss. We're all grieving. And then you go to this idea that, oh, now we have to honor her. Now we have to honor her and the character. And we've already written, basically, we have those 3 scripts already done, and we have to trash them and start over again because this momentous thing has happened and needs to be addressed. And so the first, as writers, Max and I always go to fear first. What are we going to do? What the hell are we going to do with this? And then over time, you talk it through. You bring in your collaborators, and you come to a place where it's like, yes, this is what I would have wanted for Linda and for the character.
But I also think there were 2 other things at play that got us through this experience, and that was experience and relying or being comfortable enough to rely on the truth, because we know very early on that if we didn't, like, there's a version of a show where she goes on a vacation and you radio her in on the phone and you don't deal with it. That's not true, right? And then, we very quickly got to, why don't we? It was so impactful, and we were very much in the moment when it happened. But then when we knew we had to get back to work, we looked at each other and thought, Jesus, why don't we just write the experience that we just had and kind of infuse it with the love that we had for this woman, because we have a mother and a son on, front and center, and they can do that for us, to capture the tone, to make sure it didn't go too far in either direction, to disrespect it or to overplay it. I think we were able to do that. That really spoke to the experience of Dave and I and Jimmy and that writing room, keeping us really in line with what's the best way to serve the elements that have been put in front of us in this really kind of jarring way. It was the most upsetting thing that could ever happen to us on a show, and without sounding disrespectful to her, and I'm not, because I loved her so much. I feel like we did good by it. We did good by her, because she actually made our work even better. She brought something out of us that we didn't see coming.
And there's always something funny that comes out. For any of my own experiences with death of close people, there's always, as horrible as it is, there's always something funny among the survivors. There's always something funny that you can cull from it if you have a supportive, loving family. And
you're it's Jewish, and yep. Being Jewish also took us through. I gotta hand it to the Heaps for that.
No, that was the point. I mean, where it's they're fairly closely related. Like the flip side of one is just comedy is tragedy plus time, right? Well, there was no real time, so you had to, but we put it in there anyway, right?
And, before I go, I have to mention, I mean, this is like such an all-star group. There's so many Emmy nominations behind all of you. I lost count. Jim by himself has almost 50. A TV Academy Hall of Famer. What does Emmy recognition mean to a show getting renewed and finding its audience as people who have all been nominated before.
Even with that number you said, which is a little short, it's still great to be recognized, no matter what people say.
But I think the answer to your other question, then, is that it's significant. Like, right now, it's so. I think executives at studios are so reluctant to say yes to things because it's so fear-based. So any kind of validation for a show is really helpful and really good. And now even more so than ever, I think, just because there's such this environment of, do we really know what's working, and do we really want to put our necks on the line in support of a show? So validation from something like an Emmy nomination is absolutely significant.
But because the field is what it is, you just have to accept what comes your way. But I will say this about Nathan Lane. There is not a performance in the comedy category that will touch male lead in a comedy any better than Nathan Lane did on Mid-Century Modern this year. I stand by that. I stand by that, knowing kind of what the field is. Who knows? Who knows if this thing will be marketed enough that the world will know about it, or that the Academy will know about it. But if I removed a giant part of who I am, the ambition and the drive and all that stuff, and just focus exclusively on the art that we're making, I personally, and I think for Dave too, that watching that master class in male comedy, it doesn't get better than what he did.